Hello and welcome to Season 2 of You Don't Know Jack, an HHN Fan-Cast. Just like Jack, we are back with a whole new season covering the history, speculation, and everything to do with the greatest horror event of all time. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, which is not affiliated with Universal's Halloween Horror Nights in any way, welcome. If you stuck with me through Season 1 and have returned for my particular brand of HHN coverage, thank you and welcome back. This season, we have a lot to look forward to, including more history of HHN content, covering more of the event's icons and previous years, plenty of speculation for the upcoming season, and of course, full coverage, house, zone, and show reviews of the much-anticipated Halloween Horror Nights 35. With this year set to be an anniversary year, and Jack likely to be the star of the show, this is certain to be one of the biggest years in Halloween Horror Nights history. Speaking of Jack, with the high likeliness of his return, this season of the Fan-Cast is set to be a very Jack-heavy season, with multiple episodes related to him. If he does show up to the event, prepare to be sick of me, as he is my personal favorite icon and I will be more than happy to discuss him all season long. We are also looking forward to having our first ever guest on the show in an episode that will be very different from the formula of last season. All that and so much more will be coming your way this year on You Don't Know Jack, an HHN Fan-Cast. But enough of looking to the future. Let's focus on today and what exactly this episode is about. On this episode, we have your first history of episode for the season, focusing on an icon who has had quite the relationship with Jack himself. He has been a part of the story since the very beginning, but we have only recently seen him make his icon debut at the event. He also may be making an appearance alongside Jack this year at HHN 35. Today, we focus on the history of Dr. Oddfellow. Dr. Rich Oddfellow made his first appearance as an icon very recently, in 2023 at Halloween Horror Nights 32. His first appearance, however, was in Fear House back at HHN 10 in the year 2000, where he was created to flesh out Jack's story as the circus ringleader and Jack's original killer. This time, in 2023, he played as host for an event that would be themed completely around his story, which would allow us to uncover so much more about his relationship with Jack. The two are now tied together better than ever thanks to this event. Every scare zone was themed around Dr. Oddfellow and his journey to find immortality. We as guests jumped in at different points in his timeline in each zone, before reaching the culmination of his and Jack's origin in the house titled Dr. Oddfellow's Twisted Origins. This was a house I was absolutely obsessed with, as it finally revealed how Jack became immortal alongside Oddfellow, and deepened their relationship. By the end of the season, it truly felt like another confrontation between the two of them was inevitable, and if you ask me, that will be this year at HHN 35. Oddfellow's usage throughout the event was phenomenal, making him one of the best icons in recent memory. He would welcome guests in, taunting them during the opening ceremonies, before making pop-up appearances roaming in front of the park. He was a terrifying presence, with such a draw that made you want to know more. His symbol was weaved throughout everything, and even returned this past year for the final night of HHN 34, teasing his return. Dr. Oddfellow's time in the spotlight allowed for one of the best years in the history of Halloween Horror Nights. So, let's get into what exactly his story is. From his original lore with Jack created for HHN 10, to the revitalization we saw in HHN 32, here is the fictional story of Dr. Rich Oddfellow. Dr. Rich Oddfellow was a charismatic circus entrepreneur who ran several circuses of fun while secretly perfecting his craft as a dark sorcerer. His ultimate goal? To become the most powerful being on Earth and possess the power of immortality. He would do this by harnessing the power of the Dark Zodiac along with the souls of his followers. But before we get to that, we have to go back to his beginnings as an aspiring sorcerer. In the 1920s, Dr. Rich Oddfellow would begin his quest to harness the power of the Zodiac. He drew symbols on his face and body in an attempt to gain their power, as well as the power of immortality. Oddfellow journeyed into an uncharted jungle, known by superstitious travelers as the Jungle of Doom. It was in this forest that he discovered a hidden temple housing a crystal skull, which granted powers over the souls of the living. Using the skull, he twisted the flora and fauna of the jungle into his own abominations, leaving them to guard the temple and attack any who approached. He fastened this crystal skull onto the top of a cane, creating the Cane of Souls, one of his main sources of power, and began to travel to the United States. Oddfellow created the traveling Dr. Oddfellow's Grand Circus and Exposition, and later Dr. Oddfellow's Carnival of Thrills. This carnival employed former convicts along with monsters of Oddfellow's own creation. While playing host to many acts, his star performer was none other than Jack Schmidt, a clown who would go on to be quite an icon in his own right. Years later, Dr. Oddfellow set up his carnival, Dr. Oddfellow's Carnival of Thrills, in a small rural Midwestern town. In 1939, in this carnival, Oddfellow mutilated hundreds of people, some of which were his own performers, turning their bodies into grotesque symbols of the Zodiac. They served as both tributes and sacrifices to the Zodiac while trapping their power inside of his Cane of Souls in an attempt to achieve immortality. At this point, Oddfellow's rituals and power would begin to be associated with a mystical symbol, the same one on his forehead. Then, one night, in order to cover his tracks, Oddfellow tore down and burned all posters and advertisements with the name of his carnival. He then created hidden Zodiac symbols all over said carnival. These symbols, fueled by the spilled blood of those slain, contained great amounts of power. Pleased by the ritual, the Zodiac's deities granted him his long-sought immortality, and the power of the Zodiac itself as rewards. It was on this same night that Oddfellow's star performer Jack came to him looking for help. It turns out that Jack Schmidt was a longtime serial killer who was responsible for the murder of several children throughout the southern United States, and he now believed that the FBI was onto him. Fearing imprisonment, he went to Dr. Oddfellow for help and possible concealment. What Jack didn't know was that Oddfellow was also wanted by the authorities for the, quote, accidental death of patrons at one of his carnivals years earlier under a different name. He did not want the authorities investigating his circus, so he asked Jack to show him where the bodies were hidden. Jack obliged and brought him to the bodies of 13 dead children, who were stuffed in 3 small trunks inside of his traveling coach. Fearing the worst, Oddfellow attacked and killed Jack, stuffing the clown's body inside of an old Jack-in-the-Box prop and leaving him to rot in a house of horrors. However, during their entanglement, Jack swiped at Oddfellow's face, permanently scarring him and getting some of Oddfellow's immortal blood on him. Combine this with the finishing blow coming from Oddfellow's Cane of Souls, and Jack would begin his own journey of immortality. Oddfellow eventually sold off the House of Horrors, with Jack still inside. If you'd like to know more about Jack's story, check out our episode on the history of Jack, titled A History of the True Icon of Horror. Oddfellow erased all mention of Jack Schmidt from his carnival, destroying any and all posters and advertisements under the assumption that he had seen the last of the clown. As we will later discuss, he was very wrong. After these events, Dr. Oddfellow burned down his carnival and was able to escape into the Zodiac dimension, leaving behind hundreds of mutilated and dead patrons and employees. Through his Zodiac rituals, Oddfellow gained the ability to shapeshift. However, no matter what he became, the scar given to him by Jack remained on his face. In the 1940s, Dr. Oddfellow began to ship multiple crates to Shipyard 32 in San Francisco for safekeeping. The crates, displaying his symbol in a private warehouse, stored various creatures both captured by Oddfellow as well as mutations of his own design. Some of these terrifying creatures included vampires, werewolves, fairies, man-bat creatures, and more. One day, many of these monsters escaped their crates and slaughtered all the workers of the shipyard. Rather than risk his own safety to stop these monsters, Oddfellow shapeshifted into a monster himself, becoming a werewolf and joining in on the carnage, and covering his tracks. With no trace, Oddfellow disappeared and would not resurface until 1961. This was when Dr. Oddfellow disguised himself as a vampire named Earlo Wolf and attempted to infiltrate the Vampire Council. He created an elaborate backstory claiming that he was a circus worker who was bitten by a vampire council member, Olado, in 1938, which caused him to turn. It was also during this year that Oddfellow met a woman vampire named Casilla, who became very loyal to him. He was accepted by the Vampire Council and, in 1968, became a member of the council himself, and worked against the council leader, Olado. He insisted that the vampires should go on a feeding frenzy, killing and feasting on whoever they wish without restraint. While attempting to convince the council of this, The scarred symbol on his forehead began to glow, which went unnoticed by all but one vampire who helped him get his seat on the council, Casilla. However, she did not say anything out of her devotion to him. Dr. Oddfellow did all of this to gain power over Alato and sway the members of the vampire hive under his influence completely. In 1969, Oddfellow would unleash the vampires on a music festival in a small town in upstate New York called Music Fest. They caused mass destruction and chaos, killing indiscriminately and feasting as they pleased. Oddfellow hid among the vampires and absorbed the souls of those slain into his cane, further strengthening his power. During the chaos, Oddfellow killed his rival Alato, stealing his body in the aftermath and using his blood to increase Oddfellow's own power over the vampires. As Oddfellow continued to gain power, Jack made his return in the year 2000, where he shared the story of Dr. Oddfellow and their relationship. At the time, Dr. Oddfellow's carnival was touring and in town during Jack's event. Hidden in the Nazarman's Alley in the New York section of the park, Oddfellow had brought to life the Fear House, a twisted lab where Oddfellow could showcase experiments and tortured humans. The carnival featured lots of clowns and mirrors to disorient Oddfellow's guests, who would become his newest deformed creatures, likely losing their souls in the process and strengthening Oddfellow's powers. Jack and Oddfellow, however, never crossed paths during this event. While he would make multiple appearances at Universal, in 2006, after celebrating HHN's Sweet 16, Jack took up residency in Shady Brook Asylum. It was here that Jack learned that his former mentor, Dr. Oddfellow, had been a patient at the asylum and was still alive. Motivating him to take his revenge, Jack escaped the asylum in 2007, and he would finally encounter Dr. Oddfellow once again. Jack immediately set out to take his revenge on Oddfellow for killing him all those years ago. Jack found his old rival at Dr. Oddfellow's Dark Carnival and Emporium. After nightfall, Jack snuck his way into the tents, where he located and killed Dr. Oddfellow. Or so he believed. It turns out that while Oddfellow appeared to be killed, he was actually transported into the Zodiac dimension, though Jack did claim the Cane of Souls and created his own Carnival of Carnage, where he would serve as the ringleader. Oddfellow would remain trapped in the Zodiac dimension, severely weakened after his confrontation with Jack and unable to break free. In the same year, with Oddfellow away, Casilla met Jack the Clown and learned more of Oddfellow's true backstory and his apparent death. By 2022, Casilla began doing her own investigating around Oddfellow and the story of his symbol that she saw glow on his face so long ago. She was able to connect the symbol to the shipping crates at the massacre of Shipyard 32, as well as his expedition into the Jungle of Doom. Oddfellow would be trapped in the Zodiac dimension for many years, as it wasn't until 2023 that he was able to break free thanks in part to the dark powers he gained from killing Alato. With Jack nowhere to be found, Oddfellow was able to reclaim his Cane of Souls and began working as a ringmaster and snake oil salesman, working crowds and promising immortality to his followers. He claimed immortality was possible through his elixirs if he inflicted his form of fear onto others. During this stage of his life, Casilla returned to the picture, noticing the hypnotic effect his words would have on his crowds and even herself. In her final moments of free will, Casilla wrote what she had found to her vampiric father, Heinrich. Afterwards, Casilla became Dr. Oddfellow's primary henchwoman and accomplice. Now, at the height of his power, Dr. Oddfellow seized control of Halloween Horror Nights in the vein of others he referred to as silly little creatures that would call themselves icons. He then extended an invitation of immortality to all of his followers who would be willing to follow in his footsteps. He would show them images of fear and terror which would break their connections to the mortal world. No one would be able to resist immortality, allowing him to gain a legion of followers completely under his control and a feast of sacrifices to unleash his full strength. Throughout 2023, Dr. Oddfellow would mock his followers for previously subjecting themselves to the icons who came before, making specific reference to a certain clown. Before departing Halloween Horror Nights, now gaining so much power, Dr. Oddfellow spoke to his loyal followers on the final night, calling out Jack and teasing a confrontation between the two of them. Before departing, Oddfellow had a message for Jack's maniacs, saying, quote, "I have a message for those of you who would worship a certain clown. Those who think dear old Jackie boy could do anything to me, you are surely mistaken, friends. The power I possess, the things I can do, there isn't a thing that sorry clown could do to me. This is your last chance, friends. To those who would worship him, do worship me. Gain immortality. Serve under Dr. Oddfellow, or perish with a clown. A clown who doesn't know jack about horror. He then thanked Casilla, allowing her and her vampires to take their fill of blood, and assured his loyal followers that they would see him again very soon. While he has not physically been seen since, his infamous symbol did appear inside of La Casa Creacion, where Sergio Navarro, the famous El Artista, met his end, leaving us to wonder what, if any, role Oddfellow may have had, and if the appearance of his symbol last year in 2025 could mean an inevitable return to this year's Halloween Horror Nights. At the time of recording, Halloween Horror Nights 32 is the last time we saw Dr. Oddfellow. However, a return does seem inevitable. The teases Oddfellow himself made at the end of his season made fans very excited for the possibility of another showdown between Jack and Oddfellow. Add to this the appearance of Oddfellow's symbol inside of El Artista, a Spanish haunting, on the final night of Operation last year, and this year being an anniversary year which almost guarantees the return of Jack, I would not be surprised to see Oddfellow opposing him for the spotlight at HHN 35. Dr. Oddfellow changed the game when it comes to icons of Halloween Horror Nights. Instead of reusing a previous icon or creating a completely new character, this was something in the middle, taking a character so closely tied to the original icon of Halloween Horror Nights and fleshing him out to a degree that rivals even the most developed of icons. It almost felt like a return to form for the event after towing the line of what an icon is with the Pumpkin Lord. This felt like the stepping stone for a whole new icon era, intertwining two icons in a way we had never seen before. Having Oddfellow as an icon in his own right creates a brand new dynamic between him and Jack, setting up a rivalry that guests can invest themselves in and one that can be developed over multiple years. Being the major Jack fan that I am, Oddfellow's year became one of my favorites of all time. Getting to explore his story while fleshing out Jack's origin was an incredible feat for the entire HHN team, and I can't wait to hopefully see the next chapter of their story unfold this year at Halloween Horror Nights 35. Thank you for listening to this episode of You Don't Know Jack, an HHN Fan-Cast. We are back! Just as before, this podcast is not affiliated with Universal Orlando Resort or any parent companies. If you enjoyed the journey, feel free to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, remember that you don't know Jack, never go alone, and I'll see you in the fog.